Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm glad to have Janet Buntrock here today. She is a licensed professional counselor and she specializes in working with children. And I'll let her tell you a little bit about herself and some of the do's and don'ts with children in divorce.
Like Leslie said, my name is Janet. My background is 17 years in early childhood education. I realized what really lit my fire was working with the families, and I went back and got my graduate degrees in counseling and Christian studies. So I've been a counselor for 20 years, and some of the do's and don'ts with kids in divorce. I assume if you're working with Leslie, you're working toward a mediated and a collaborative, and are perhaps more open to working together. But let's talk about some do's with kids, and this goes from your little bitty kids to your older kids, because your kids know what's going on. So do tell the truth, don't tell all the truth. So if you're getting a divorce because there's been a reason for the divorce, there's been another relationship, or there's been something that's happened that's broken down, your kids don't need to know the details. Don't make them take sides, don't make them choose. Don't put them in the place of being what I call monkey in the middle. And they're monkey in the middle anytime they are put in between the two of you. So if your child comes home from the other parent's house and they're grilled with, what did you do? What did you eat? Where did you go? There's ways to find out how their weekend was without making it be an interrogation. And kids are hypersensitive to being interrogated and hypersensitive to criticism of either parent. So you also don't want to make them have to continuously choose which home is the better home. So try to avoid the comparisons, particularly if there's an economic difference. If one parent is able to do Disneyland and Six Flags and the other parent is doing the park and going to the gym, those are all really good things, and let them be really good things without making the child choose. And one of the biggest things is even a teenager shouldn't have to choose which parent to love most and which parent to choose sides, where to live. That's unfair. A child has two parents and deserves to have two parents and shouldn't be judged for loving the other parent. Even if the reason for the divorce is you grew to despise your spouse, your child doesn't need to be a part of that. So tell the truth, just not all the truth. Be honest, again, without giving them information that a child doesn't need to know. Don't make the child take sides. Don't say, oh, your dad did this, or your mom did this. And when the marriage is ending, talk about that the marriage is ending. One of my favorite children's book titles is When Mommy and Daddy Forgot How to Be Friends. A young child understands that. And try to avoid the statements that aren't going to feel true to your child. Your mom and I will always love each other. Your dad and I will always be best friends. But if everything else they see contradicts those words, then you've kind of broken trust, and then they don't know what to believe. Once I worked with a family where two very small children, preschool and kindergarten, were told that their parents had bought the second home to try out the new house, and they were going to alternate houses. Well, of course, it went to a divorce. Even the 5-year-old knew it wasn't a true story. It didn't make sense. She would say to me, where I work in the schools, I'm Mrs. B. Mrs. B, I don't think they're telling me the real story. What that did foundationally is now, as a middle schooler, she doesn't trust what they say. You can recover it, but why go there? When you think about introducing somebody new, and Leslie and I talked about this, there's no hard and fast rule. We're not your parents. At the very least, wait till the divorce is over, till the divorce is filed, because children see cause and effect. And so if that other person is introduced too soon, that child can then link that person with the cause of the divorce. Whether it's true or not, children see cause and effect. And what that happens then is then that makes that child choose. They're going to want to find someone to blame, someone to be angry at. The new partner is a convenient target. If that new partner comes in too soon, the child will see that person as the cause. And you don't want that. And then when you think about the things that you do with your children, when you bring a new person in and you choose that to have activities, and you're going to be one big happy family, and that new person has children, your child may not see that as a good thing. Your child may see that as a replacement. Not that you're replacing the other parent. They almost always link that to replacing the family. my mom got a new family or my dad got a new family. Even if you try and you're juggling all of that, new relationship, new kids, new home, new everything, and you're doing the best you can, your child is going to reach a conclusion that's not necessarily where you want it to go. So you want to be straight with that, and you want to take time and just wait. And when your child comes to spend the weekend with you or the evening with you, it's not a treat to them to meet a whole bunch of new people. Their world has already been cast asunder with the divorce. Whether it's one child or four children, they want to be with you. They want your attention. And when I'm thinking about attention, give them attention. That means don't be on the cell phone texting if you can avoid it. Don't be talking to someone else, because otherwise they disengage. They go to their electronics. It's hard enough to maintain a relationship right now with your kiddos without you being the one disengaging. So when you're working with your kiddos, you want to be honest. You want to be kind to them. Try to avoid using your emotions and lashing out at your kids. I mean, everybody has bad days. Everybody has a day where your kid is stepping on your last nerve. If you hear one more squabble in the back seat, you know, you're ready to pull over and let them out. But try to be aware of where your anger is coming out and aimed at your children. Because again, children see cause and effect. If your marriage is ending and your anger is going toward your child, what your child can then do is then blame themselves. Cause and effect. Daddy is angry. Mommy is angry. I must have done something. As in working with adults in therapy, over and over again, I sit with grown adults that say, if I'd just thrown the tuna can, thrown the tuna can away, my mom wouldn't have walked out. And my parents would have still been married. Because their need to see cause and effect, they're going to find a link. And when you don't give them honesty, they'll make up a link. I always say that children can add A, B, and C and get 96, and you have no clue how they got there, but they need the equation to work. So they'll fill it in with what makes sense to them. And what makes sense to them, what they've seen on TV, what they've seen from their peers, what they've seen in the classroom, what they've seen in movies, might not be based on your reality at all, but they're going to make conclusions. So be kind to your kids, be kind to each other, if at all possible. One of the best things that you can do is not speak ill of your spouse, your ex-spouse. And certainly don't speak ill of your ex-spouse's family, because that puts your child in the middle to have to choose. Even, by the way, if you have reason to speak ill, if they truly have done horrible things, your children don't need to do that, because that's their family too. Don't make them choose. And again, when you're working with your kiddos, in your honesty, when you've blown it, admit it. Say, wow, bud, I had a bad day and I took it out on you and it wasn't your fault. They need to hear it's not their fault. They need to know they didn't cause it. They need to know that it's not because they were hard or they were difficult. It's even more compounded if you have a child with any kind of learning disability or physical disability that already feel perhaps that they're a hard kid. They're going to be acutely sensitive. And again, they look for cause and effect. And be aware. So to take time and to listen. So one of my biggest do's is make time to listen, whether that's one-on-one. In times of COVID, the Starbucks dates aren't quite as attractive as they were. But if you can find one-on-one with your kids, to go for a walk, to walk the dog around the block, or to go to Starbucks, or to get a Slurpee, to let your child know that, A, they're special. Because divorce makes you feel very unspecial. And even though we know a huge amount of marriages end in divorce, it's my firmly held belief that children aren't asking when their parents are going to get divorced. They aren't asking if their parents are going to get divorced, they're asking when. It is so common. And then you have children that have multiple divorces, that have lived through multiple times. Vivid memory is the 5-year-old of the youngest of 4 kids playing Barbies. And I hear her say to the other 5-year-old, let's not get married because it's silly to keep changing last names. So they see that going around them, so their stability has been threatened. So if you will go through a divorce, does that mean you might not want to be their parent anymore? The younger the child, the less likely that they're using concrete reasoning. So if you can get mad at my mom and not want to be with her anymore, are you not going to want to be my dad anymore? Or you don't like my dad, but you always said I look just like my dad. Are you not going to like me anymore? So be aware. You know your children, pay attention to where you see. And then when there's a behavior change. So when do you look for help? Expect some regression at any age, by the way, at a time of divorce. Divorce is a trauma, even the most amicable, because the world has changed. Have they regressed? Are they temper tantruming? Are they door slamming? Is a child who was potty trained no longer potty trained? Do you catch your 7-year-old falling asleep sucking her thumb and she hasn't sucked her thumb since she was 4? Those are security things. They're looking for concrete, tangible things. They're looking for their transitional objects. And your transitional objects for your kids, it might be the teddy bear. It might be, now it's probably their phone and their earbuds or their iPad. Be sensitive to those and allow the children's things to be the children's things. We've all heard those horrible divorce stories where if one parent brought the clothing, you couldn't take it to the other parent's house. And I sit with kids all the time that go, oh, I got a hoverboard at dad's house. They don't say I got a hoverboard. They say I got a hoverboard at dad's house because that's the only place they can play with it. Or I got a new computer, but it lives at mom's. And I understand it's difficult to go back and forth with things, but divorced kids talk about all the time. It's snowing and my snow boots are at my other parents' house. I can't go swimming because I was at grandma's last weekend because both my parents were gone. All those things unsettle their lives. I worked with a family that he came to pick up the kids and he didn't notice the 3-year-old wasn't wearing shoes. And he was really angry because he had to go out and buy the 3-year-old shoes. And in his mind, he didn't buy clothes. Or she's picked up the children and she decides she doesn't want anything that came from his house. So the kids go home and the clothes that are her house don't fit anymore, or they don't like, or they're the wrong style. And that's so confusing and unsettling to the kids. So whenever possible, the question should be, what is best for my child? What does my child need? What does my child want? But the biggest do is love your kids. Let them know that they're loved. Let them know that it's not their fault. Let them know that they didn't do anything to cause this to happen. And again, if you had a moment where you said something horrible to your child and blamed them because that's the way it felt at that moment, find a way to recover that. And again, be able to say, I'm sorry. And even to say, you know, buddy, I'm sorry. I didn't want you to have to go through a divorce, especially if you yourself are a child of divorce. Another thing you probably don't need to do is if you are a child of divorce, they probably don't need to hear your childhood divorce stories because that's trauma on top of trauma. If they ask, be honest, but be careful that you don't dump the whole load on them. A teenager, quite frankly, doesn't care. I mean, they just don't. They're still self-focused. And be aware that a divorce can cause your child that is ready to start the process of individuation and separating to want to separate sooner. You know, you may be suddenly spending all their free time in their room, and how much of it is developmental, how much is process trauma, how much of it is they just don't like anyone right now. It's hard to know. And even if you bring them to a therapist, I'm not going to have a magic wand and say, oh, this one is hormonal. But just know that there's things that are going to change. This changes the dynamic because you've changed the structural integrity of their lives. A divorce is a structural integrity issue. But you've chosen to do mediation, so that tells me that you're willing to work. You're willing to work together and you want things to work well. And right now you're willing to work in a collaborative way to do custody, and know that when things change, those do's and don'ts remain the same. Do tell the truth, do be kind, and don't tell all the truth. It's my bit.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Janet. Boy, you can tell you've been doing this for a while. You've seen a lot of things, and what a wealth of information that was.
Well, and I'm glad to be a resource, and I will be providing a bibliography of books and resources for kids at divorce. It'll be on your website.
That's great. I appreciate that. Now, would they be able to reach out and contact you for some kind of a consult if they needed it now or in the future?
Absolutely. I do private pay only, but I do a free 30-minute session. So if they just needed a quick question, we could do that free 30-minute session. And then from then on, we're at my regular rates.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much. What a great resource.
Thank you, Leslie.
All right, take care.